What you wear can affect the outcome of your audition, so it's something worth thinking about. Let's talk about what to wear and, more importantly, what not to wear in an audition. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Ding. As always, smash that subscribe button. We still saying that in 2024? And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our free weekly newsletter, The Scuttlebutt. Okay, a quick shout out to Sandy for giving me this idea just last week. Thanks, Sandy. It's an interesting topic that I haven't really covered before. We've talked about props, but not really wardrobe. But truth be told, when you are prepping for an audition, you're likely to think about what you're wearing. Now, there's a part of me that wishes we could all just wear black mock turtlenecks and jeans, kind of like the way Steve Jobs used to dress for all of his events. It would just simplify things, and we wouldn't have to think about this. But I get that it'll never be like that, and that it's not a simple task to decide what to wear for an audition. See, casting is filled with creative folks. Heck, they requested you for this audition despite the fact that your headshot might not really be appropriate for the role for which you're auditioning. They can think outside the box. However, the folks they work for might not be so open-minded. Somewhere up that food chain is likely a person who thinks more literally, especially in the world of commercials, which we'll get to later. So for folks like that, it can be helpful to anchor their brain by being more intentional about your wardrobe. Okay, so before we get into what works, let's first talk about some traps or no-nos when it comes to wardrobe. Please, no costumes. And I'll use tax language to specify what I mean by that. Come tax time, when you're trying to write off certain things, you can't write off wardrobe that can be worn in your daily life. The only wardrobe that you could write off, and this is, of course, depending on how you're filing your taxes, please talk to a tax professional. Don't take my word for it. But in general, if you can wear that piece of wardrobe in public as part of your daily wardrobe, then you cannot write it off. If it's specific to a specific job and you can only wear it for that one job, then maybe you can write it off. And so those are those specific costumes that you just don't need to go buy. If you have a side hustle or a day job that has a wardrobe associated with it, like a lab coat because you work in a lab, that's fine, but don't go buying a Santa costume just because you're auditioning for a character who works as a mall Santa. Don't go to the Army Navy store and buy fatigues just because you're auditioning for military. Now, of course, you're going to do what you do and you're going to listen to other people who are giving you advice. I'm just trying to take the burden off of you, the anxiety, the fear that, oh no, I have to buy this for this audition and this for that audition. You don't. No one's asking you. No one's requiring that of you. And if you think wearing a lab coat and a stethoscope in your audition is going to somehow give you a leg up and book you the job, it's not. But more on that at the end of the video when I talk about the 80-20 rule. Now, there is a gray area when we get to this part of the discussion because for doctor and nurse roles, for example, many actors have bought scrubs or white lab coats already for acting. They don't work in the medical field, but they own these pieces of costume already. It's in their closet. Those are pretty simple pieces of wardrobe, mainly because they're so common. There are so many medical procedurals out there. There's so many doctor and nurses roles that come through your inbox over a given career. And so they're not as distracting to see an actor show up in just general nurse scrubs or a white lab coat. And so right away, we can see that there are no hard and fast rules. You have to use your own discernment when it comes to, is this too much? Have I gone too far with this wardrobe? But here's the overall point when it comes to going too far. Let them do some of the work. If you become the wardrobe designer for your character, then you're taking away the ability for them to think creatively about the possibilities for your character. You also might get it very wrong. I was once at an audition. It was a callback for a Coast Guard officer. And there was a guy in full Army fatigues, the camo fatigues. He was not only dressed for the wrong branch of the armed forces, but Coast Guard officers wear like navy blue polos. They're very casual compared to Army or Air Force And they definitely don't wear fatigues with the hats. And so this guy was so distracting with his choice that there was really not much chance that he was going to book that role. In fact, I was just in a workshop this past weekend with a casting director who talked about these distracting choices. His example was when, back in the day when things were still in person, an actor started to come in with tablets as opposed to physical scripts in the room. It was distracting because now him and the team were thinking about that choice. Oh, are they trying to save paper? Oh, that screen is really bright. Their face is blue from how bright it is on their face. So they were distracted by the choice the actor made to use this tablet instead of a physical script. And that poor schlep was acting their heart out, and no one was paying attention. They were just thinking about their tablet. So don't go so far in your wardrobe choice that you're standing out for the wrong reason. It could backfire. The other big no-no is to put no thought into your wardrobe. I mean, I get it if you're stuck at your corporate job and you have an audition last second, you have to rush to get taped to tape it, and you don't have the appropriate wardrobe. Although back in the day when there were in-persons, you always had an extra change of clothes in your car along with your headshots. So maybe there's not really an excuse for that. But here's a specific example. Let's say that you're auditioning for the MC of a big gala celebration, fancy affair. Please don't go rent a tux for that audition. Please don't. If you own a tux, fine. You can wear that. But you could just wear a simple shirt and tie, suit jacket if you want, something to suggest the part. But don't show up in nurse scrubs. Yeah, that's happened. Whether that's your day job or, I don't know, you're just trying to be cute, just stop. That doesn't help. You are sabotaging your audition in that case. So the overall piece of wisdom is to dress to suggest. I just warned about going too far with costumes or the opposite, doing no work and putting no thought into it. The sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. And this is where I want to briefly bring up the difference between commercials versus TV and film. In commercials, it's more acceptable. Heck, it's actually more encouraged to go further with your wardrobe for the audition. Because with commercials, there are way too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to decision makers. And some of them are creative, but some of them are not. I mean, you have casting, you have the production company, which is sometimes separate from the ad agency, which is then separate from the client. I mean, that VP of marketing, no offense if that's you, but they may be more literal and not very creative as they are watching your performance. I once had a director tell me that he had a client for a commercial that was infuriated that it was taking longer than 30 seconds to shoot their 30-second commercial. Yeah. Closely related is don't show up to a Home Depot audition wearing blue. That's a Lowe's color. And please don't show up to a Lowe's audition wearing orange. Even worse. Don't show up to a Burger King commercial wearing McDonald's red. The client will assume that you're genuinely trying to disrespect or insult them. It's the quickest way to get removed from consideration for that role. In the film and TV world, however, you can rest assured that more of the folks get it. And so you can pull back in some of those choices. For example, if you're auditioning for a doctor in a commercial, then yeah, wear the white lab coat if you already own it. And heck, even put that stethoscope around your neck if you already own it. Please don't feel like you have to go out and buy these things. But for television and film, don't wear the stethoscope. It looks like you're trying too hard and it won't make you stand out, at least not for the right reasons. But let's pause that discussion and now shift to talking about the types of clothes you should own in your wardrobe that might be appropriate for different types of characters. First, you ought to consider what looks good on you. Brooke and I have both done Color Guru. Now I'm a Twilight Autumn. And what's fun about these little cards is it's not just a palette of what looks good on me, but some of these colors are labeled like this color that I'm wearing is sort of my powerful color. And then a lighter sort of green tealish is my energizing color. And then there's a deeper red that's my signature color, which I don't wear enough. But a resource like that helps me choose what to wear for an audition, for a headshot session, and just broadly speaking, helps me shop for clothes. I'll put a link in the show notes below to Color Guru. This obviously plays into your backdrop color as well. If you have a backdrop at home, then there's no excuse for you being a floating head. You know what your color is. But if you're coming to get taped or another taping service, you might not know the backdrop color initially. But by your second audition there, you can now tailor your choices to not only your skin tone and what looks good, but also to what the backdrop is going to be. You also need to know what those colors are going to look like under the lights of an audition setup. Some colors will wash out your skin tone, so you need to be aware of that. But beyond the strict visual choice of like what colors look good on me, now we get into script analysis. Just because your character is listed as the CEO of the company, your only scene for the audition might be them at the gym. So, don't wear a suit in the audition. You should also understand the tone of the show. For a Nickelodeon show, maybe don't wear the black turtleneck unless that is part of the joke. Conversely, if you're auditioning for a post-apocalyptic show like The Last of Us, maybe don't wear neon. And here's a fun extra thought, which is as you sit with that tone of the show and the character analysis, you can make a decision to either double down on the character as you understand them, or you can make a more nuanced choice that creates a more complex visual representation of the character. For instance, I recently auditioned for a character who, at his core, is evil. He's despicable. But it was for a network drama, which doesn't get as gritty or dark as a cable or streaming drama. Add to that the fact that I can get intimidating and cold real quick. I didn't want to double down on that character by wearing dark, obvious colors. Instead, I created a more complex image by wearing a bright color that was actually my energizing color. This color speaks more to my approachable side, which just creates a more interesting visual representation of that character. And I didn't make this choice just because it was network versus cable or streaming. I did it because it was a guest star role. See, when your character has one line, then a good rule of thumb is to double down on that essence that you already have, that you're bringing to the character that's appropriate for the character. If the character is not so straightforward, due to the nature of who they are or the fact that there might be 4 or 5 scenes that you're auditioning with, then you can start to think a little bit more nuanced about that wardrobe for the character. Oh, and speaking of, if you're auditioning for a character that has multiple scenes, feel free to adjust your wardrobe in between those scenes. Not because the stage directions say so, but because you're being intentional about those different wardrobe choices. In summary, when you are approaching wardrobe for your character, don't let these thoughts be a burden on you. This should be about curiosity and fun. If I've raised your blood pressure by talking about this, then forget everything I said and just remember this one thing, which is to dress to suggest the character. And to put your mind at ease, I'm going to get a little nerdy with something I referenced earlier in the video, and that's the 80-20 rule. It basically states that 80% of your results are due to 20% of the input or 20% of your effort. So, the way I see it, the way it relates to this discussion, is that your essence, that vibe that you bring into a room or the moment you show up on the screen, that is 80% of what will contribute to you being considered for this role or not. And the reason why it's only 20% of the input or the work is because it's who you are. You can't really do anything about it. You can do the work, like through the Sam Christensen image process, to figure out the specificity of what that essence is and how people do perceive you. But once you sort of are in ownership of that knowledge, then it's very little work to bring that to the table, to bring that into your performance. So it's really only 20% of your effort, but it results in, well, I would say probably more than 80% of the reason why you get cast or don't get cast. So sure, the choices you make for wardrobe, they can have an effect on the outcome of the audition, but proportionally, a very small effect. The real work comes in the classroom, the foundation of your craft, along with that knowledge of who you are and what you bring to the table the moment you show up in that room or show up on that self-tape. To use an appropriate metaphor, you need to let the clothing or the skin of the character form itself to you instead of you trying to adjust yourself to fit into the character. That's a subtle distinction that's maybe better suited for another video. So while these other considerations like wardrobe, props, lighting, camera frame, etc., can have an effect on the outcome of your audition, be careful to not let this become a burden on you, because then it just becomes noise that is preventing you from doing the real work, which is bringing authenticity, bringing that grounded performance to the table. That ultimately is what casting is looking for. These other questions about wardrobe and such, they just nudge you forward. They just bring you from that 80% to maybe that 85%. They're not going to be the deciding factor for whether you book this role or not, unless you go way too far or put no effort into it and take yourself out of the running because of those extreme choices. And once again, these decisions about wardrobe and such do not replace what is absolutely essential to your success as an actor, to your longevity as an actor, which is that foundation of training. Okay, what did I miss, or what questions do you have? Please drop a comment below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.